Hello and welcome back to Business and Brunch. This week I have a special guest with me, Candace Dudley. Candace is a podcast guest coach. She has produced over 200 podcast episodes herself, and she has been a guest on over 50 episodes plus on top of running her business, and she's also a mom of 3. So listeners, buckle up if you're ready to learn how Candace is juggling both motherhood and business through using podcast guesting as a way to grow her business. So Candace, first thing before we talk about business and your story, if you and I were in person having brunch, what would be your go-to brunch order?
Ooh, like an avocado toast if they had something like that. Maybe eggs, tomatoes, sprouts, some balsamic vinaigrette, some fancy toast.
A little bit of bougie.
Yep.
I love the bouginess. I am usually an eggs Benedict person, but there is the time and place that I crave the avocado toast, and it is just absolutely a great go-to to have. But can you take us back to the moment where you realized that you needed visibility beyond social media? Like, what was that point in your business that you were just like, I want to do things different. This is how I'm going to learn to grow?
Exactly. I was in the point in my business where I had already been through a lot of pivots, a lot of changing my mind, course correcting type of things. So I was very confident in what my offer was. I was very feeling embodied in my work and had been in the podcasting game for a long time. I, over 4 years now, have ran my own show, produced all of my own episodes. And through that experience, it's led me into the podcasting world and it brought people that were asking me questions. So I can remember in January 2025, and I was still home with my kids on winter break. There was like a very long break last year for some reason, which was great for the teachers, great for people we had tons of fun, but I was just itching with that New Year energy where I was like ready for more people to see my business because of the space that I was in and feeling so confident having made all those pivots. And I knew I needed more eyeballs on my work, but I didn't have time or a quiet house, if you will, to record tons of social media content, show up on tons of different apps. And actually, I had tried those things in 2024. At the end of it, I was just coming off of doing 2 challenges for doing 30 reels in 30 days, stuff like that. I had started a new TikTok, a new LinkedIn, because that's what other people had told me to do. And it was daunting. I wasn't gaining any traction. It just was a lot of effort for not a lot of reward. So again, still in that space where I'm not getting the eyeballs, people don't know what I do. And so I kind of had a light bulb moment where I was like, let's see if I can use my podcasting experience and be my best client and send myself on a podcast tour. So I started reaching out to shows, started posting on threads that I was looking to do that, sharing the speaking topics I was ready to talk about, which was podcast guesting. Being a host, I knew what goes into a podcast episode. I knew the flow of them. I had guests on my show, kind of knew what made a good guest, also knew what made a good pitch, and reaching out and being a human, because you might get this too, where we just get a lot of bad pitches as hosts. We get those emails that are very spammy or they don't have any alignment with our show at all. So I knew that there was a lot of people doing it the wrong way, in my opinion. And so I tweaked all that and did it how I thought it should be done. And here we are. So it has worked for me, and it's brought me such a big network of people that I wasn't really even expecting that it would happen so easily in the small bits of time that I had being a mom of 3 young kids.
That is amazing. I think that truly shows just how doing things differently and finding ways to integrate strategies and tactics into your business that actually work for you can really show the expansion and growth, just like not even as a business owner, but as yourself as well. So for listeners that are wanting to be on guest podcast, but they don't truly know what they can talk about, how would you help them go about finding like a topic or being able to like pitch themselves?
Absolutely. So I love that you start with how do you find a topic, because that is the first step in my 5-step process that I work my clients through, is finding your niche speaking topics. And we want to be really specific about those, as specific as we can, because that's how it's going to stand out to a podcast host. That's how a host is going to look at your topics. Having 2 or 3 of them is great. So then a host can see if their audience would love one of those topics, or if you have a different take on something. A very generic thing to say would be like, I do email marketing. I love to talk about email marketing. You can make it a lot better if we get more specific and share maybe what part of email marketing are you the best at? I know someone who she's phenomenal at the automations and all the triggers and the workflows that go into emails. So that's something very specific. So if you can find what's unique about you or the different take you have, that can also really help. But I always say start with asking yourself, if I had to speak on a podcast tomorrow and I couldn't prepare anything, what could I confidently get on the show and talk about? There's going to be a topic in there, right? And then we also check to make sure, and I help my clients do this, but make sure we look at what kind of offers do you already have? What kind of maybe free resources do you have? And how can we find topics that are within that so that it becomes very aligned? And when you're on the show like this, because we have a very specific topic and I help people guest on podcasts. So you're asking me the questions that I feel confident answering because it's right in my wheelhouse. And then it's also easy to talk about, that I do have a business. I'm here giving value to the audience, but I'm also saying, hey, if you're someone that is looking for this, I do this. And it's easy to share that when we have those niche speaking topics really aligned with your offers and what you do. Then you don't feel like you're on a show giving a whole sales pitch. You're just there giving and sharing your expertise and providing value to the audience.
Yeah, that's where like the storytelling comes in play too, because you're also able to give examples, which I don't know about you, but for like me, being able to talk about how I serve my audience is so much easier than writing it all down. And like those real life examples, which is why I love podcasting myself, because it just gives you a different way to share your message, which I think is really important as well, especially if you feel so burnt out of trying to do 30 reels in 30 days or trying to grow an Instagram page or a TikTok and just doing everything. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know my message again. So what you just said really helps bring people back to their message as well. So what would you tell someone if they want to start guesting, but they have no website? How can they use the guest posts, but they have no place to like store it? What piece of advice would you give someone to say like, this is how you can make the most out of guesting?
That's a great question. A website is great. That's a great piece of the puzzle. You don't have to have one to be able to start this. You should have somewhere that you can send them at the end of the episode. So it's best if it's somewhere that you can capture their email because now they're in your space and you can nurture them and you can share more about what you do there. But that doesn't mean that you have to have a website. You can have like a free downloadable or something that they can grab by putting their email in. So lots of programs that are inexpensive and some even free where you can just start where you're at in business, whatever, how far you are in, or if you're new, having something like that where you can move those people that have listened to the whole episode and they're very interested in you, they're connecting with you in your story, that you offer that as a place for them to go. And that's going to be key in making sure that this isn't just a great experience and a good talk with the host, which there's a lot of value in that too. Actually, a lot of the hosts that I was on their shows this year ended up being some of my clients because we have this deep dive conversation and then we stay in touch online and it's just this big network building thing. But yeah, having somewhere that you can send them where you can know who they are and sort of nurture that relationship for those ones that are that interested is key. Now, when you do get into it and you have that website set up and all of those things, that's going to be great because all of those links of yours end up being in the show notes, as you know, and that's creating this authority online, sort of behind the scenes that you're usually unaware of, but it's making Google and other search engines really happy because all those backlinks to your website, to your social media, to your resources is telling Google, hey, I'm sending you to these places. We can trust this link. We can trust this person. And so that's all great. And it's also searchable. Your podcast episode is searchable. You become more searchable. So a website is a great piece of the puzzle, but it doesn't mean that you need to have this fully done thousands of dollar website that you paid for, right? You can start where you are today. You could get a landing page up. There's ways to make this work for you. And so that you don't have to be like, wait, I can't guest on a podcast unless I have these 10 things that are going to take me all year to get done. I don't want anybody to think like that. You can still make this work.
Oh, I love that. That is really great to know that you can just kind of have a place and just get started. And I love that you integrated building your email list because I'm all about building an ecosystem for your business. That way you're not just relying on one thing. So I want to kind of jump into how you talk about alignment and value when it is guesting. Can you kind of go into a little bit deeper into that?
Absolutely. Those are two of my biggest pillars is keeping things aligned and leading with value. People get a little hung up on, I don't want to be salesy or pushy, like in regards to pitching and reaching out to those hosts. But what we need to kind of reset our mindset a little bit and think about that you're giving your time to the show. And yes, they're like, as the host, you're doing a lot for me too. You're editing this episode. Guest episodes take way longer than a solo episode to do. There's coordination, questions to prep. All of that. It's a lot of work. So I really appreciate you letting me be on here. But you're also coming as the guest and giving a lot of value that maybe that host isn't an expert in, right? You're filling that gap for their audience. So you're serving, right? When you lead with that and you're not planning to get on the episode and gatekeep and things. So our mindset needs to be a little different, that we're not pitching, like we're not in a network marketing business and sending out cold hey girl messages from 5 years back that made everybody feel on edge and skeptical, right? This is something much different. You have a service and you could change someone's business or life by them signing up with you. And so you're there giving out value and tips and actionable things that they can do on the episode. So that's one mindset thing that we have to switch a little bit if we're hung up on, I can't just pitch a podcast host. Well, podcast hosts that have guests are looking for guests all the time. And in the course of a year, if you're doing weekly episodes and every one of them is a guest, which a lot of people do, that's 50 guests, right? And so just think, why can't that be you? We are looking as hosts for quality guests to fill in gaps. And there's so many podcasts out there. There are definitely ones that are aligned for you. And where that alignment piece comes in is making sure we've done our homework, right? I knew you like to do things differently. You like to highlight visibility and things like that. This is an area that I can cover where a lot of people aren't thinking about when it comes to their visibility. So we can check for those alignment pieces. If you're a mom, there's mompreneur podcasts out there. If you're an introvert, I've been on an introverted entrepreneurial podcast. There's literally something for everyone, whether you have a service-based business or a done-for-you business or, coaching business, those types of things. There's so many out there that we can really find that fits you very well. And so then when that matches up, you've listened to the show, you've checked for that alignment, or I do that for my clients, but you can do that too. And then you get on that show. It's like inserting yourself in a room of people that quite possibly are already searching for you, especially when you nail those niche speaking topics and you present that to the host. They've said yes, they know that their audience is looking for your topic. So it's like speeding up the whole know, like, and trust process because you get to borrow that host's trust. And when they bring on a guest that they know their audience is already searching for, how great is that you just get to be in that room with them? It's pretty awesome and can work in your favor really quickly.
I love that. Now, what would you say to someone that is trying to build up their confidence, where they kind of want to test out a couple different topics? They're not even really sure if like this is for them, like a strategy for them, and they don't want to basically show up and embarrass themselves, but they do want to try it to see. So what would you tell that person?
Well, first of all, as a host, you're not going to fall flat. You're not going to embarrass yourself because we want you to succeed. We're going to edit the episode, or we're going to jump in when you lose your train of thought, as you know, right? It's our show. We want the episode to sound great. We're not going to put something out that puts you in a bad light. So keep that in mind too, that both parties want it to be a successful episode. So that can kind of ease a lot of fear. But also the other thing is we just got to try it. So if you have any inkling at all, try it. Get on a show, and it's okay to ask if they edit it, because that can ease your mind. It's okay to ask if they don't send you sample questions ahead of time. It's okay to politely ask if they have any so that you can prepare. Leave yourself a few post-it notes of the main 2 or 3 tips that you're planning to give that you really don't want to forget. And like anything else, we always want to walk into the arena and be good at what we're doing. But like everything, we have to let ourselves be a beginner and step in, and you're going to get better. The cool thing is when you let yourself do that and you put in those reps of talking about your offer and your experiences and story over and over, you really hone in on your message and you become more and more confident in what you're saying, and it ripples out into your emails, to your social media posts. Those things become easier to do because of how many repetitions you've put in and talking about it. It just gets clearer and clearer. So Yes, you got to start somewhere and just know that everybody wants you to succeed, but there's things that we can do to minimize that, like
Mm.
planning out. That's why part of my offer is having a one-on-one call so that we can go through what you're going to talk about. We can go through and make sure that you feel really confident about that. But trusting that there's an abundance of people too. There's people that have not found someone that they connect with. So there's an audience out there for you, waiting for you. And when we kind of keep that service heart in mind, that can help us get over some nerves too. Because if you think about this could help someone, how exciting that is. You can show up as you are, as your current experience in right where you are in business. You don't need another certificate. You don't need another degree. You have an expertise to get exactly where you are. And there's people waiting for that. So taking that to heart too is helpful.
You just said the magic line of show up as you are. I think that has been a common theme throughout the last couple episodes that I've had guests on. It has been a common theme of show up as you are. You don't need to continue to perfect things, but just trusting who you are, your message. So listeners, again, if you're here for this episode and you're realizing the common theme, that is your authentic self. People want to learn from you. They want to hear your message. You are what makes it different. I love that you said that. So I want to kind of address a little bit of an elephant in the room or ask you, have you ever had an episode that you were a guest on that didn't go live?
Yes.
How
Does
did that
that
make you
surprise you?
feel?
So this was before I started actually doing this with a strategy. 2.5 years ago or so, I did a couple of guest episodes. I was just in a spot where I was doing kind of a lot of different things in my business. I wasn't as clear and I was just excited for the opportunity, which is kind of where a lot of us come into this, especially if you're not in the podcasting world. And so I was excited to just be on the show. I gave it zero thought of how this is going to affect my business. I was just taking it as it was, as an exciting opportunity, no strategy behind it. And the host actually cut me off in the first question where they ask you, tell me about your story. How did we get here? Something like that we usually lead with as hosts. I told my whole life story, just about every pivot, twist, and turn that got me to that point, and she had to pump the brakes. So that's a tip for you, is that intro should be really short, like 2 minutes, touch on different parts, but don't do a deep dive. Focus on who you are now and who you help now, and let that host sort of ask those further questions because they know their show and they know what their listeners want more of. And so you can let the host guide that. You don't need to share everything. I know that there's value in those stories. I know that there's value in those twists and turns. And so I was excited to share them. But that is one, mistake that we can do, because now you've eaten up possibly 5 to 7 minutes. It's very easy to do that. You think it's a long time, but it's not when you're just riffing and talking. And now you've cut, let's just say it's a 20-30 minute show. It's a quick one. You've used a good fraction of that time on that. And we haven't gotten to the middle of the show where you are highlighted as the authority figure. You're highlighted as that expert in your industry and you get to talk about what you do. So we want to make sure that we have a lot of time for that. So yes, that episode actually never aired. Part of that is I learned from that and thought back to myself, like, I'm a host. I should know better, but we don't. We don't know what we don't know. And sometimes we're just so excited we can't see anything else. But yeah. So yeah, now you know my dirty laundry.
It happens to the best of us. I think the
Yeah.
first 3 episodes I guested on, I don't think they ever went live. And I
Okay.
looked at it as a way of like, I did it. I got like the scary nerves out. And then ever since then, the
Yeah.
ones that I've been a guest on, they've gone live. I've gotten better. I have reached out to some of the people that I first did it and was like, hey, I would love to try to be a guest on your podcast again. I have more experience. This is my clear topics because I'm a yapper. So I would go off on like little tangents, and now I'm like,
Right.
no wonder they didn't go live. But that is good to know that it's okay if episodes don't go live. You're still learning
Right.
and growing.
And you can look at those. I try not to put like a lot of weight into that, because
Yeah.
really, did anybody know at the time? No. Life keeps going on. You've learned something. Just pause and reflect. Have some grace with yourself. Don't beat yourself up, but just think, what could I have done better? And it'll likely be pretty glaring after a bit, like, oh, that makes sense. And so then you adjust it and you get better. But like you said, now you've tried, now you've ripped the Band-Aid off, and the next one's not that scary, because the same thing with pitching and reaching out to hosts. What's the worst that can happen? They ghost you. They don't write back. That does happen. Or if they say no, I also don't think, those podcasts not airing or a no, it's not necessarily that bad of a thing, because they know their audience. So now we're not wasting each other's time. They know that that topic isn't something their audience wants right now, or someone's already covered it, that type of thing. I think it's okay. And then that means, though, too, on the flip side, that those yeses and those episodes that do air, those are going to be so aligned, and you're going to be in front of awesome audiences that are ready for what you do and they're excited about what you do. And that's 5 of those types of episodes are going to be way better than 20 episodes that don't really hit.
Since you mentioned pitching, I would love to talk about some of your favorite strategies for pitching. I know you talked about it a little bit earlier in this episode, but really kind of get into the juice of what makes a pitch absolutely irresistible to a host. And then what are your favorite ways to pitch, or like favorite platforms to pitch on?
No, that's a great question. Actually, that goes with my answer to the first one, because I prefer, and this is funny, I'm laughing because a few months ago on Threads, I made you just throw things out on Threads. I made a simple one-liner post. I said, stop sending your podcast pitches through emails. And then I had a barf emoji, which in hindsight, that's what I think got some people. But I had a lot of comments. And what I can tell you from the 50 some hosts that I've chatted with this year, we have all said the same thing, that we would prefer a quick DM on social media because of the bad pitches that are coming through on email. And I touched on that a little bit ago, but it's like big companies, they're pitching their client, they maybe copy and pasted a title of your show. It's very easy to spot the bad things, right? They spell your name wrong. They don't have alignment with their guests and what they're doing and what your message is on your show. So the hosts I've met this year, they agree with me in that a quick DM with those topics. And I say put 2 things in. One, you're showing you've done your homework. That means you've listened to the show. You've checked for alignment between their message and yours, and you somehow briefly let them know that. It's very easy as a host, to know if someone did that. And then 2, the bulk of that DM is it's going to include those niche speaking topics. So we're going to list those. I know I could bring a lot of value to your show with these 3 topics. Are any of them a great fit? That's where I start. Then yes, of course, move it to the email when it's time to schedule or things like that. That's where I start. The people in the comments of Threads that were fired up about that was interesting. They were all publicists. So almost all of them were publicists. So working with big companies, of course, that would be the standard to send emails. Typically, the people I'm working with are solo entrepreneurs or an entrepreneur that maybe has a VA, but they don't have, 10 plus people working for them. So I think that's where that dispute landed. Some people say they don't check their DMs. That's fine. Those people probably aren't checking email great either. So follow up in either one of those places, whatever feels best to you. If you love an email, I say go there. The nice thing about sending in a DM is that they can just click over to your profile, see that you're a real human, scroll through, check you out. When we get those emails, because of the quantity of bad ones, we're a little leery to click on any links that you might provide and things like that. So it's hard to tell who's a real human, who's trying to spam you. The other thing in an email you might include, though, would be it's called like a one sheet or a media sheet, where it's about you, your bio, that type of thing for them to look at. So when you do a DM, you don't need all of that. It's just more personable. So I just always fall back on being a very genuine human. How would you like to be approached? I don't think you need to follow a host for X amount of time before you can send the message. It just is, are you going to bring value to my show? And have you listened to my show? Because, we put a lot of time into our shows. It's usually a passion project or something of ours. And so we take a lot of heart in that. And so if you can just approach that as being a genuine human. But those are the 2 things that I say put in your pitch. I like to keep it short and let that podcast host say yes or no. I do follow up, but those publicist companies, they follow up within like 10 hours. I like to give it to people a couple of days, a few days, maybe a week, and then just send another one saying, I'm just following up with this. I know things get lost, and maybe give them an out. It's okay if it's a no, just let me know and I'll stop reaching out. Yeah. So just be a human. We've got so much AI. We have so much spam emails and things. So that's my take on pitching. But it's not as scary as you think, especially when you're leading with the value. Like, let the host know, I'm not going to come on your show and gatekeep. Like, this is what I talk about. And if you don't get any hits with those topics, tweak them, get more specific, try different wording, or hire someone like me and we'll help you do it. Right. But, you can play with that. Just because you sent one doesn't mean you can't change those if it's not getting the results that you want.
Exactly. There's always like room for growth and improvement, plus support from experts like you that can help
Right.
really make this a good strategy if you want to take it to the moon and run with it instead of focusing on growing an Instagram page. So, kind of bouncing off of that a little bit because visibility is really great. We always want more eyes on our offers, more eyes on our accounts, more eyes on our expertise. But whenever it comes down to truly creating a strategy that works, how do you help your clients position themselves in the episode? Obviously, the host is going to help too, but actually help that episode convert those listeners into leads? Is it through like pitching? Is it just through showing up as the authority expert? Like what have you found that works best for yourself or for your clients?
One thing is to have a system in place. So I can send you this link to a free tracker that is just really simple. It's where you can link the show, link the host contact information, stuff like that. And you can mark where you're at in the process with talking with them, what topics you've pitched them. Because as you get going and you start sending these, it's easy to forget and get overwhelmed, and then you'll want to stop. So get a system in place, download that. It's free. You can go grab that. But then as far as making sure that this converts, I always think of a podcast episode as sort of 3 parts, and having that general understanding of that can really help. We've already talked about having a great topic aligned with your business and what you do and your offers. So then when you start booking the shows and you're actually speaking on them, that intro piece, which I already gave you some tips on that, the big part of it is that middle part where you're talking about your tips, the value you're giving about your topic. So one thing that we sometimes over deliver, and that can be a negative because we want to think about how someone's going to feel when they get done listening to the episode. We only have so much of an attention span, right? So we don't want to give away 10, 15, 20 tips. We might think that that makes us feel good because I'm over delivering, I'm giving so much value. But someone that gets that many new ideas and that many new actionable things that they can do when they get done with the episode, are they going to feel empowered to do those? Or is it going to be too much and they're going to feel like I can't do that? So 2 or 3 tips and actions that they can take is actually great plenty for one podcast episode, because then you're going to be done and think, I can do those 2 things. I feel very empowered to do that. So that's one thing for the middle. You can also play around with how you word things. So instead of just giving the tip, you could say, one of the things that my clients work on, you're throwing in those things so that the people that do want to pay for help, and there's some that are going to run with it on their own. That's awesome. We love that for them. The people that do want someone's help and they want to fast track things, they want to invest and pay for those things, we can tweak how we talk about what we do, and that will help as well. Even as far as like little things, like if you're on a mompreneur podcast, say the word mom. That's who's listening, but I've been on shows then where it's male and female entrepreneurs, maybe more in corporate. I'm not going to say mom, and I'm not going to just say she, right? Then we're going to tweak how we're speaking. So that can go a long way in making that audience feel really seen and connecting to you. And then the third part of the episode is, where are you sending them? And again, we don't want to have a lot of choices here because that's going to lead to inaction, but we want to send them one place at the end of we're not to that part yet, but a lot of times the host is going to say, hey, where can we find you? Where can we connect with you? And this is a great time to share a free resource. It's a no-brainer for someone that has listened to that whole episode about that specific topic that's still listening, to share that tool, that resource, right? And having it be one thing that matches that episode, and then sharing the best places, Instagram or wherever that might be, or your website. So that's kind of the flow of it. Any parts that we miss or drop the ball on or don't have a place to send them, obviously that's going to lose you the chance to get people in your neck of the woods. The other part that not a lot of people think about is the host. If you have a great chat with that host, you get done and you're like, wow, that was the fastest 45 minutes, hour of my day. That was so great. That flew by. You were awesome. Follow each other on social media. Cheer each other on. I can't tell you how many times other hosts and I tag each other now when you see something on Threads or Instagram where someone's looking for a service of X, Y, and Z, and they come to mind. That's the other thing. When you nail that speaking topic and you focus on one thing and you don't jump around to lots of different things, when the host is asked, hey, do you know someone that does X, Y, and Z? They're going to think of you. If you were very generalist and you talked about email marketing, but then you jumped over to podcasting and then you jumped over to websites, you're not going to come top of mind when that host is asking. And as hosts, we do get asked a lot. People know that they can come and ask us for referrals. That's one thing about podcast hosts, is they're the ones that are going to field that type of question a lot. And those those referrals are right now what people are buying quicker with or signing up for services quickly with, because anytime you get a real live human that can say, you trust that human, and they can say, I trust this person, go sign up with them, you need this. It's an easy yes because of how many times we've been burned or we signed up for a course or something and we didn't get what we expected. So that buying time is, if you've noticed, is getting longer and longer for people to trust you. But in this way, this is another touch point, but it's a lot different touch point than social media where it's a picture, a quick 60-second video. If you're listening to this episode, you've spent 20, 30 minutes with us. We've now sped up the trust, right? You've stayed here for a reason and you've listened for a reason. So that connection and hearing someone's real voice, we can fake something. We can read a script for 60 seconds on a reel or a story on our social media, but it'd be very hard to fake an entire podcast episode, right? AI is not doing this. We're actually having a conversation, which is, I think, what people are craving right now, that real person community.
100%. And since you mentioned community, can you tell our listeners about your own community?
Yeah.
That looks like if they wanted to join it.
Absolutely. So that is something that's pretty new, but there's already over 200 people in it. I launched it in the beginning of November, middle of November, but it's a place for podcast hosts looking for guests and guests that are looking to guest on podcasts. So I called it the podcast matchmaking community because I wanted a simple free space for both parties to come in and sort of skip all of the cold messaging and things. So if you get in the community and you get in there, there's a spot for the hosts and guests, or if you're both, you can fill out both, but it's a super mini short form, basically putting in your speaking topics or the topics your podcast is looking for, and you're a way to have someone contact you. And then both parties get access to that growing file of people that fill that out, so that can sort of start those connections and be a really great free spot where you can possibly book your first podcast guesting, or if you're launching one, book your first guest.
So I love episodes that feel like a mini free training. And I love that you also have a free community that people can kind of go connect with you further. Where can our audience find you if they want to reach out and learn more about it? And then what is one last piece of advice for someone who is feeling inspired and overwhelmed that they can take this week, aside from jumping into your community and working with you?
Okay, where you can find me is at my name, Candace Dudley. It's basically on all platforms. So my website is CandaceDudley.com. Threads and Instagram, Candace Dudley. But shoot me a DM on Instagram. It's me behind the scenes. I'm a one-woman show, and I would love to know your takeaways or just know more about you. That connection piece, we can start that there. So don't be shy. If there's questions you still have from this episode that we didn't cover, please shoot them my way. I'm happy to answer them. And then your second question, the last bit of advice for getting started, ripping that Band-Aid off, is we got to start with the niche topics. So if you can figure out one or two or three of those that would really work for you, my challenge to you is to go post them on Threads or post on your favorite platform and just share that you would love to guest on podcasts this coming year. You're wondering if anybody has a podcast or knows someone who would love these three topics, and you list them out. That's where you could start. You might not get any hits right away, but you might. And how cool would that be? And you can't guest on a podcast if nobody knows you want to guest on a podcast. So you can start there, and that'll be your first dip of your toe outside of your comfort zone if that's scary to you, and start sharing it and see what you can find.
Absolutely love that. But I have completely enjoyed our conversation today. I think that you put so much value into this, where if someone is listening to it, I 100% know that they have a route and a path to take in their journey to guest podcasting. Now that they know where to connect with you, is there any other way that they can work with you outside of joining your free community, or is it a one-on-one offer that how you serve your clients?
Yeah, I have a one-on-one offer. It's called the podcast tour. So if you want to really take this to the next level, you can get in there and book your tour for Q1 2026. We can have that call anytime. I will pull out your niche speaking topics for you. I'll have those ready. I will help you get your pitch ready. All of those pieces that we covered in this episode, I will do that for you. And then we'll have a strategy call before we send you off into the wild to get booking. But I find you 10 to 15 shows that perfectly align with your message, your topics. I tap into my network that I've been building for the last 4+ years, and I hand those off to you in a filled out tracker so that you can just start sending those quick 30, 60-second DMs and book yourself a podcast tour for 2026. Get those eyes on you.
Well, I love it. There you have it, listeners. If you are looking for a new way to reach out to your audience, build your visibility, and sign clients, definitely reach out to Candace for podcast guesting and get yourself on a tour, and let's grow your business and build your life. Candace, thank you so much for joining me this week on Business and Brunch. It has been such a pleasure and honor to have you, and I just 100% know that you are just doing such great in the world of helping women and entrepreneurs build a business.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. This was awesome.